Thank you. In the very beginning, I'd like to mention that having experience on something doesn't make you good at it, but I'll do my best anyway. We haven't actually timed this presentation at all, so I hope we can make it run properly. I'll try to leave enough time for Maccabee as well, so I don't just go on and on drone on this about these first slides. So let's go to the second slide. Yes, perfect. About rate limiters in general. The purpose of a rate limiter is to limit the number of requests, sometimes also the rate of data flowing or stuff like that. But here we talk about the number of requests coming maybe from a single IP address or subnet or overall during a specific time interval. They can be used to enforce like reasonable usage limits so that no one is hogging the resources of a service, or prevent abuse, like a simple denial of service attacks and things like that. They can also be used to curb the use of our services by some aggressive bots, which of you probably also have seen a huge increase in the late 1 or 2 years due to the large language models, harvesters that are pretty aggressive. And of course, there can be like too enthusiastic end users and people just doing way too much on our servers. Things that seem quite similar, quite normal, but are just too much. So the implementation in VuFind, for some parts, is not quite new. It's been present in a released version already, but there's been some new developments that improve it here. It uses Symfony's rate limiter module, so we didn't have to write everything from scratch, but use some proven code. Also allows for different policies, depending on a set of rules. And we started with a simple set of rules. Now it's become a more complicated set of rules, but you can still be simple if you need to, if you can cater for your needs with that. And what's nice is that it can be configured in report-only mode. So you can establish the rules and see what would happen if you enforce them. Typically, there can be quite a few things to tweak, like libraries using a single IP address behind a NAT and showing as a one user doing quite a lot of things at once. VuFind's implementation doesn't have support for waiting, so you can't say that someone's blocked from your system but is put on a wait list and you get through when done. It would tie up some server resources or make the implementation a little bit more complicated. Usually, the server will respond with an appropriate HTTP error message when someone exceeds the limit. It's also possible to configure use of additional headers to indicate when to retry how many requests you have, but those are not enabled by default. Let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. There are sort of four different policy types that okay, Damien says, I hope everyone else is hearing. Okay, I'll continue anyway. Different policy types to use with the rate limiter. Kind of traditional is like a fixed window. You have certain number of requests you can use each hour, or maybe for each day. Sometimes useful for like daily limits of API. You can do this amount of searches and you'll be blocked after that. Or a sliding window that kind of smooths out some of these bursts of activity, but is basically quite similar to a fixed window otherwise. Then we have a token bucket, which in my opinion is the most versatile and easiest to manage. You get sort of a bucket of tokens that you can use, and the tokens will be replenished after a certain amount of times. So say you start with the 100 tokens. So you can do 100 actions. In VuFind, every action is usually 1 token. And then in every 1 minute, you get 10 more tokens. So it allows you to do like an initial burst of activity. Then you find something of interest. Your bucket will refill while you are looking at the results and things like that. And then you can do some more. So it's kind of fair in a way that many use scenarios work. And then there is reject all, which kind of sounds weird, but it could be used to just block someone completely, or it could be used for turnstile, which will be discussed later. Next slide, please. Thank you. So about rules, there are like so many different things you can put in the rules, and VuFind's rate limiter has some advantages compared to maybe something that's external to the system. IP address is, of course, a really typical one. Any sort of web-based rate limiting system can handle IP addresses or group of addresses or excluding some addresses, like applying policy to everyone but something. But with VuFind, when it's built in, we can also do more. We can check if a user is logged in. So guests have 100 tokens. Logged in users have 1,000 tokens. So if you log in, you get more. Encouraging people to log in. Of course, if you log in, it also means that you at least resemble a real user. So probably, unless you also manage to hack the login system, you are already a real user. You can match the controller and action in VuFind or the route name. So if a user is doing a certain action, regardless of what the URL leading to that action is, he will be allowed or included in the policy or not included. Of course, query parameters, post parameters. Then the user agent, which is sort of useful for detecting good bots. But many of the bad ones try to avoid detection by a user agent. So it's kind of useless for the worst cases. About the storage, a rate limiter needs some kind of a storage system, a storage mechanism for storing the information about the different sessions. And in this case, we need something that's fast enough. So typically it's Memcached or Redis or some of its clones. And it has to support time to leave so that it can clean up after itself. So it doesn't just accumulate this information. So that's something to keep in mind. We can't use the file system because it wouldn't be fast enough. And it also wouldn't support time to leave. It has some issues. So if it's a high-level function in VuFind, VuFind needs to be bootstrapped. Routing needs to be established. Configuration needs to be read. So it's sort of a heavy process. So we need to use some resources, maybe just to block a request. The NAT problem, multiple IP addresses behind a single, multiple users behind a single IP address, is a real issue. And then DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks. When the requests come from all over the world, from different IP addresses, we have no way of knowing if they belong together, if they are caused by a single actor that's trying to cause trouble for us. But here is where turnstile can help. And here is, as far as I remember, also the spot where I turn over to Maccabee.
I think that's right. Thank you, Ere. Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. So as Ere was just saying, the turnstile implementation is fantastic. There are some scenarios where you want a separate policy for bots, because although humans may be using up some traffic. It's the bots that are causing the real problems. Are people hearing me okay? I'm seeing waving, but I'm not sure. Okay, great. I'll keep going. Thank you. So yeah, it can be hard to, oh, echoey maybe because if you turn off the microphone in the room, that will be better. So the bots lie about user agent, so it's hard to identify them just by looking at the user agent screen. VuFind has had some CAPTCHA support for years, especially in its form capabilities, but it's not, the bots can get around that and they're not always accessibility compliant. Oh no, okay. Hmm. More dancing.
Hello, hello.
Hello, talking just in case it changed. Okay, you can hear me. All right, I'm getting echo, but I can talk if it works. All right. So I think we've covered this slide, but the point is sometimes you want a separate policy for bots because captures aren't different. So, Turnstile. It's a captcha replacement service that's intended just to detect bots. And it looks basically like what you see on the screen there. It presents a checkbox and usually checks the checkbox automatically after some logic. And sometimes the user has to check it themselves. But it's a free service and it claims accessibility compliance and it's far less user interaction than a typical CAPTCHA. So if that detects bots accurately, that's a big win. In VuFind, Turnstile is made available in VuFind 11. I will just say that Lehigh is running VuFind 10.2, and we've backported the Turnstile functionality. It's not hard to do so if folks are in a rush. So it's an optional addition to using the rate limiter. It's essentially a second rate limiter that decides when to show the challenge, the challenge being that checkbox. And it can either show it immediately using that reject all policy that Ere was referring to, or you can let some traffic in before showing the challenge. And you can also subject the challenge to all those same configuration rules that Ere was describing before. So for example, you can only show the challenge if users are not logged in or to certain IP ranges or so forth. So the behavior is that if the challenge succeeds, then it allows access, but the primary rate limiter is still respected. So after a while, that access may still turn off. If the challenge fails, then it behaves just as if the regular rate limiter failed. But in practice, the bots tend to ignore JavaScript. So the challenge is actually skipped rather than failed. And so in that case, there's a third rate limiter policy that's possible to limit how many times the challenge can be ignored and then auto-failing at that point. I should say, just because the bots are ignoring JavaScript right now, they change their behavior every month or two. So who knows what will happen tomorrow. Some of the issues that we've had with Turnstile are that the botnets are big enough at this point that we see every single request that's clearly in a coordinated attack coming from completely different IP addresses, different ranges, different countries. So the grouping feature doesn't work as well as it used to for us. Therefore, we recommend showing that challenge immediately if you're using the Turnstile enhancement, so that for any untrusted requests, and limiting the number of attempts, the number of times they can ignore the challenge pretty low. I think we have it about 2 or 3 right now. We also, it claims to be accessibility compliant. We'd like to prove that. And there's some concern that users with legitimate ability issues might occasionally fail the attempt, especially if you limit the number of attempts. So that's still a concern. And finally, the fact that we're relying on a commercial service is not ideal. It would be great if there was an open source solution. We may explore Anubis as a proof of work solution for this, just because as an open source project, it would be great if we had a fully open source solution for the long term. So that's the presentation, and I'm sure Ere and I are happy to take questions in whatever time remains, but thank you so much.